we don't leave anybody behind, and we close every time.
All right, gang. So we got the crew assembled, the Motley Green Team crew.
That's
We
right.
decided to scare all the moms and babies with putting our gigantic faces here on a screen. In case anybody ever thought that was a good idea, I guess we'll figure this out here together. But most importantly, though, is the reason hopefully why you clicked on here. We want to try to get a hack in on one of the things that we think principally is the most important element in the entire onboarding process for, you know, a would-be first-time buyer. And that is the selection of the agent and the mortgage broker that you choose to help get you there. So let's do a quick little cattle call here, gang. So who do we got? Who do we got hanging out with us?
What's up, guys? Jeremy, co-founder, Greenhouse Group, mortgage planner by day, and probably one of the cooler guys on this call. That's my wife says anyway.
Yeah, evidenced by the wood sticks there. That's just slightly adjacent from the back of your head.
These?
It seems to make sense.
Hey, how you doing? Craig Sutliff, realtor here with the Greenhouse Group, partner with Jesse and the crew over there.
David Hewson here, broker of the Greenhouse Group, and by day, my mortgage planning skills are in full effect. And today, I have my sidekick that you will be hearing from time to time in the background.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Hey, so let's get this party started. So pleasantries eschewed. We got some content to get to. So, you know, grateful for carving out this space here with us, with you, with the assembled. I want to get right into this, guys. Way I'd kind of imagine this to keep it super simple, stupid, easy for me to do the last one.
Stupid.
Formulaically is just to say, hey, man, here's the one thing that you got to know, right? Here's the one thing that, you know, is probably a myth you got to blow up, right? The thing you got to know that you probably don't know or just ain't so. And then the last one I would love to kind of challenge you guys with is just like, hey, you know, you've been doing this for a hot minute. Everyone here on the panel's been doing this for 2 decades, some plus. It's like, what's the thing that you now know, because you can recognize it as a pattern, that you wish you would have known on day one, right? So kind of like a little, you know, little mastery hack there too. So I'll get this party started. The number one thing that comes up for me, and it seems to be a peril of the first-time homebuyer conversation, is the idea, so maybe this is the category of like what not to do, right? What not to do is not actually hiring your own real estate agent. And I know that may or may not sound so trivial that it doesn't belong in a 3-part as a 101, but man, it's so dangerous that in my humble opinion, it absolutely does. And so here's some of the ways that you might know if that's true for you. Like, don't call the agent on the sign on the home that you think you saw out there in the neighborhood that you'd actually be interested in. The reason is because that agent is actually working for the seller. Now, California Association of Realtors allows us to actually represent a buyer and a seller in what's called a dual capacity. Like, you could actually represent both sides of the transaction. It's allowed, but man, talk about one of the silliest, most, you know, potentially consequential and grave decisions that a buyer could make, because you're walking into that just because somebody can pass you the contracts, right? Or you can sign there and God, it seems really efficient. I'm like, hey, not getting another agent involved. Maybe they'll give me a little kickback, you know, because they're not paying another deal, or whatever sort of cockamamie idea you've got that sort of, you know, correlates that into thinking that that might be the way to do it. Man, you could not be further from the truth. Like, you need your own counsel. You need your own representation. You need somebody who's going to give you the fiduciary respect that role, that role what, guys? That role
requires.
What? Yeah, requires. Thank you.
Yeah.
That role requires, I swear there's coffee in here, to be able to get you through it. Not only just to corroborate that against like other homes, right? Because it's like if you're just talking about that one home, well, then guess what? They're the spider, you popped into the spider web. They're going to try to lock you into that one home because that's how that agent is going to get that double-sided commission, right? So you're not paying for the agent when you're represented on a buy side. So because of that, you got to get your own counsel. You guys got to go see as many different homes as possible to be able to find out which one's perfect for you. And then when you actually do find that home, you make a marriage, you get it into contract, You got to have an equal representation on your side as the seller's going to have on their side. And that's how that marriage gets made. So gang, when you're out there, just know it's team first. It's really cool that you saw something that you like. Don't make the mistake of getting all into bed with that one agent because they're representing the seller's interest, not yours. You're the meal ticket. Would you guys agree with that, gang?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of truth to that. It's a really fine line to walk. And I think you and I have had a couple instances in our careers where we have done that, but it's something that's we got to be hypersensitive about our fiduciary responsibility to both parties, and it's taxing, man. I mean, I know you had a deal one time. And you said, Craig, I need you to represent this person. I don't want to take on both roles. So they were both in-house, but it was also kind of fun just going toe-to-toe and honing my skills and cutting my teeth on the negotiation side with you. Yep. And for me, that's, I was treating you like any other listing agent. I wasn't I remember what do you really mean? Yeah. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The last person that you want to be jumping into bed, and especially you don't know whether that person is more of a consultant or a salesperson. If he's chasing a commission check, that's all that he's going to care about is closing that deal as quickly as possible, sweeping anything under the rug that they can, and convincing you to close instead of looking out for things that you might not like about the house.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said, said well. And I'd say just the little brother on that, just to put a punctuation on this opening point, is also the app agent deal, right? Now, this is not a condemnation on the whole category. Lord knows there's plenty of good agents in every one of these situations. But, oftentimes people make the mistake when they don't know better that the place they started is the best place that they should finish. So, I'd say 99.9, because it's, all stats are made up, right? Of folks begin their search online. And I would say almost all of those people end up downloading a few apps to kind of start the process of search for home out there in the interwebs. That's perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. The mistake is once you get hot and heavy on something, you see something that pops up like, hey, this might be cool. They'll make the mistake of like hitting the button on the deal. And like the agent shows up and opens the door and they're like, oh, okay, I guess you're my agent. With no vetting, no efficacy, no responsibility to the entirety of that role, and all of the integrated complexities that go into that representation in a pure selection process. They just basically hit a button, someone met them, they're like, hey, I can write your offer. So don't make those two mistakes, gang. Those are chief on my list. Let's throw it over to the mortgage side. What would be number one for you guys?
Hey, I would just follow up on that point real quick. Just from the mortgage side, right? I don't have a horse in this race. Like, I don't care who represents who. And I can tell you that in those two examples you just gave, I see the most challenges. So one, when the agent is representing both sides, you can feel it. I'm not partial to it. I don't care. I'm helping the buyer, and you can tell that the agent's representing the seller, right? No matter what. Everything negotiating downhill. It's really weird. It's really obvious. And, the clients have explained to me it's for the dollar. Okay, if you're willing to give up that and you don't get your negotiation, as long as you know what you're doing, I suppose. But I think it's crazy. And that's from my perspective, and I don't care about it. Second thing is those app agents. I'm not saying that they're all like this, but I can tell you my experience in general. I'd say 3/4 of the time or better, it's not even their primary job because they get this lead that they've done nothing to do. They come and meet, and I can tell you the last person that I worked with, obviously not naming names, had no idea what she was doing because they're very small cuts. They're just getting thrown into the situation, and I felt really bad, and I ended up having conversations with that client that I should not have been having. The agent should have been having, and that's absolute impartial. Like, from the loan side stuff, it was weird and it didn't feel right. So those
it
are
almost kind of reminds me, Jer and Dave, of like, the other side of that sort of innocuous thing where it's like you're thinking about getting a home, you walk into the branch of your bank where you've got your checking or savings account or money market or whatever, and there's a desk over there, and the guy says mortgages. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's my bank. I trust this institution. That guy's probably the guy I need to talk to, right? And it's like, it's almost like the mortgage version of what you just said. It's like that guy is still dripping wet behind the ear, just fresh out of college. They threw him on the loan desk so that he could get his licks or cut his teeth on that. And usually that's like not all the time, right? We got to be super careful here, but like oftentimes that's not the guy or gal who's got mastery in that capacity, right? It's like, that's kind of where they throw the noobs. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I just wanted to quickly piggyback on what Jared was saying from the dual agency perspective as a mortgage loan originator, having to counsel my buyers in a capacity where their real estate agent should have been playing that role, because like Jared said, it's all one-sided. So it just puts us in a tough spot on the lending side. But to your point about the retail banks, holy smokes, when you offer everything in terms of financial products, it probably means you're not good at any one of them, at least. And there's no primer or better example than that than on the mortgage loan side. So you're right. I mean, there's some good ones out there, but it leaves a lot to be desired to walk into your bank branch and sit down at a desk and talk to somebody who really is just taking orders and has no connection to the underwriting process, has no weight, has no decision-making power whatsoever. And what they do is they shoehorn you into a program that really, it could be a good fit. Oftentimes, the experience you have, meaning how bad it is, can far outweigh any benefit they're offering you. The big banks probably burn through more loans than they actually close. And I would love to someday see those closing ratios, because I imagine they're abhorrent. I mean, what our standard here is at the Greenhouse Group on the lending side. I mean, we don't leave anybody behind, and we close every time. So, when we're proud of that, we work hard for that. And that's exactly the opposite experience you're going to get walking into one of the big box banks and realizing you're another number.
It's a great point, Dave. And it actually leads into something I was hoping to talk about today. And that's about options, right? Because this might actually be what it comes down to. It's not that the banks are necessarily bad at what they do. It's not that they can't help some people or most people. The problem is they don't have any flexibility. So the first person, the point you hit on, Dave, first person's not a decision maker, and they probably don't have a lot of experience. Okay, their job is to get your name, social, birth date, pull credit. That's it. Then it goes to someone who can actually take a look at it. The problem with that is now you're two checks down the road before you even realize that it's not a good fit. Also, so one thing that we've done is we've developed the Greenhouse Group. We operate as a broker. And what that gives us is options, right, Dave? What do we have, 26 different banks right now?
Yeah.
Something like that. So if one doesn't work, another one will. If you can get a loan, we can get it. That's not true if you're at anyone who's retail, and that's a bank, a credit union, or someone who calls themselves a direct lender. They may only have one set of loans. And when that happens, your scope is limited. Any hiccups, any challenges, if they can't do it, it's goodbye, not let's work on that.
Yeah.
And let me, from the real estate side, let me just offer a little perspective there. And you guys know that, I cut my teeth on the loan side of things. So I was that loan officer back 20 years ago and actually working for one of the big banks at Wells Fargo. And it was always frustrating for me when I would have a client and I would get them into contract and we would get into escrow, and then they'd say, oh, well, your rates are a little bit high. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And they said, well, I'm going with this other guy at Wells Fargo. And I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, well, he says he's a broker, but he can go through the wholesale channel and get me a lower interest rate. And my whole thing was like, wait a second, we're the big bad bank. We got all the money coming in and the people walking in and putting deposits. Why am I getting beat out by the wholesale channel? Well, you know, I look above my head and there's this big, huge commercial bank, brick and mortar, and they got to pay the rent on that. I look at every single teller, every single receptionist. There's 401k matching. There's healthcare plans. There's all that overhead that these big banks have to cover. And on the wholesale channel, you don't have any of that. We, like you said, we got what, 25, 26 lenders to choose from. And what was frustrating for me as well is that in this hyper busy market where we needed a broker or a lender to be able to close in 21 days, and the processing center said, sorry, you know, we're so backed up because rates dropped. We can only do 45 days. And then you're like stuck. You're like, wow, what do I do now? So having those channels and avenues to be able to shop it amongst these different lenders is such an incredible benefit as a buyer to be working with a broker such as you guys.
Yeah. Hey, one more quick point on that, because I think this is my favorite thing about what we do. This isn't supposed to be a commercial about us, but the idea of how we're structured that can be done somewhere else is we can reshop the loan when you get in contract. So imagine going bank to bank to bank, picking whoever's best that day, and then shopping with the real estate team for 3 months. You finally find that place and you go in, rates are out of whack. We don't have to stick with the original bank. We get to switch on day of contract. Super valuable.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that we feel pretty complete on that. So just to kind of chunk this down, don't make the mistake of thinking that where you might start is the place that you should best finish. We gave a couple of examples of some easy pitfalls to fall into in that regard from a buy side. And then from a numbers side, hey, there's a convenience element that's out there everywhere. Like, the big banks are also the ones that have the biggest budgets for marketing. They're going to be in your face all the time. And you can make the mistake of doing the exact same thing, thinking that where you might start the conversation is the best place that you should finish. So I guess both of those points summed up are team first.
Yeah.